Winners think differently before they ever speak differently. It starts in silence, in the moments where no one is watching, where thoughts are formed without pressure. They don't allow negativity to take control because they understand something most people ignore. Your thoughts become your language, and your language becomes your reality. When a winner walks into a room, they're not trying to prove something. They're not trying to dominate the conversation. Instead, they observe, they listen, and when they finally speak, every word carries intention, not rushed, not forced, just clear. Because clarity is power. Most people talk to be heard. Winners talk to create impact. That's the difference. One is focused on attention, the other is focused on meaning. And meaning always lasts longer than attention. A winner doesn't say, I hope this works. They say, I will find a way. Notice the shift. It's subtle, but it changes everything. Words like hope leave space for doubt. Words like will create direction. And direction builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. But here's the truth. It's not about being positive all the time. Winners feel fear. They feel uncertainty. The difference is they don't let those emotions control their voice. They acknowledge them, but they choose to speak from purpose, not panic. And when they fail, and they will, they don't change their language to reflect defeat. They don't say, I'm not good enough. They say, I'm not there yet. That single shift keeps them moving forward while everyone else stops. Because in the end, thinking and talking like a winner isn't about sounding powerful. It's about being aligned. When your thoughts, your words, and your actions move in the same direction, people don't just hear you, they feel you. And when people feel you, they follow. Start with why, not what. Because people don't commit to tasks, they commit to meaning. When someone wakes up driven only by what needs to be done, their energy fades the moment things get difficult. But when they are anchored in why it matters, they find a reason to keep moving, even when motivation disappears. The difference between those who start strong and those who finish strong is not talent or luck. It is clarity of purpose. Studies in behavioral psychology consistently show that individuals who connect their actions to a deeper reason are significantly more likely to persist through obstacles, maintain focus under pressure, and achieve long-term success compared to those who operate on surface-level goals alone. This is because the brain does not sustain effort for tasks. It sustains effort for meaning, and when meaning is absent, discipline begins to collapse. Most people approach life from the outside in, focusing first on what they need to accomplish and how they will get there, but winners reverse that pattern. They begin from the inside out, defining why something matters before deciding what action to take. This shift may seem small, but it completely transforms the way a person thinks, speaks, and behaves. When your why is clear, your decisions become faster because you are no longer guessing what aligns with you. Your communication becomes stronger because your words carry conviction instead of uncertainty. Your presence changes because you are no longer seeking validation, you are expressing belief. When someone speaks without a clear why, their words feel empty even if they sound impressive. People may listen, but they do not connect. On the other hand, when someone speaks from a place of purpose, even simple words carry weight. This is why two people can say the same sentence and create completely different reactions. One is heard, the other is felt. And being felt is what creates trust, influence, and impact. The human mind is wired to respond to authenticity, and authenticity is impossible without clarity of why. In moments of pressure, the absence of why becomes even more visible. When challenges arise, those who are driven by what begin to question themselves. They hesitate, they doubt, they lose direction because their foundation was never strong. But those who are driven by why respond differently. They may feel the same fear, but they do not lose their sense of direction. Their why acts as an internal compass, guiding their thoughts and stabilizing their voice, even when everything around them feels uncertain. This principle does not only shape internal thinking, it directly influences external communication. When you speak from why, you do not need to convince people aggressively or overwhelm them with information. Your message becomes clear, focused, and powerful because it is rooted in something real. People are not persuaded by data alone, they are moved by belief, and belief is always communicated through why, not what. This is why leaders who inspire lasting change do not begin with instructions, they begin with purpose, because purpose creates emotional connection, and emotional connection drives action. Over time, starting with why builds consistency. When your actions are tied to meaning, you are less likely to quit when progress is slow. You are less distracted by temporary setbacks or external opinions because your direction is internally defined. This creates a level of resilience that cannot be achieved through motivation alone. Motivation fades, but purpose endures, and that endurance is what separates short-term effort from long-term impact. Clarity of why also transforms the way you see yourself. Instead of defining your identity by what you achieve, you begin to define it by what you stand for. This creates stability in a world where outcomes are unpredictable. Success and failure no longer control your confidence because your confidence is rooted in something deeper than results. And when your identity is stable, your voice becomes steady, your decisions become intentional, and your presence becomes undeniable. Starting with why is not a strategy. It is a foundation that shapes how you think, how you speak, and how you lead every single day. Clarity creates confidence because the mind cannot move powerfully in a direction it does not understand. When a person is unclear, hesitation becomes their default response, and hesitation shows up in their voice, their posture, and their decisions. Research in cognitive psychology shows that individuals who define clear intentions before taking action perform significantly better under pressure, make faster decisions, and communicate with greater authority than those operating in uncertainty. This happens because the brain is constantly trying to reduce ambiguity, and when it fails to do so, it shifts energy toward doubt instead of execution. Most people believe confidence comes from experience or external validation, but confidence is actually built through internal alignment. When you are clear about what you want, why you want it, and how you plan to move forward, your mind stops negotiating with itself. That internal silence is what creates presence. Without clarity, the brain keeps asking questions, second-guessing choices, and imagining worst-case scenarios, which weakens both thinking and communication. With clarity, those questions are replaced with direction, and direction produces calm, focused action. In communication, clarity is immediately visible. A person who lacks clarity tends to over-explain, repeat themselves, or use complicated language to cover uncertainty. Their words may be many, but their message is weak. On the other hand, a person with clarity speaks with simplicity. They do not rush because they are not searching for what to say. They do not speak excessively because they understand that impact is not created by volume, but by precision. The fewer unnecessary words used, the stronger each word becomes. Clarity also influences how others perceive you. People are naturally drawn to those who appear certain, not because certainty guarantees correctness, but because it signals direction. In environments where most individuals are confused or reactive, the person who demonstrates clear thinking automatically stands out. This is not about arrogance or pretending to know everything. It is about understanding what matters and staying aligned with it. That alignment creates a sense of stability that others can feel, even without explanation. Under pressure, clarity becomes even more valuable. Stress amplifies confusion for those who lack direction, causing them to react emotionally and make impulsive decisions. However, for someone who has already defined their priorities, pressure does not create chaos. It reveals focus. Their thinking narrows to what is essential, and their actions become more intentional. This is why high performers often appear calm in situations that overwhelm others. It is not the absence of stress, it is the presence of clarity that allows them to operate effectively. Clarity also strengthens self-trust. When you consistently define your intentions and follow through on them, your mind begins to recognize a pattern of reliability. This reduces internal resistance and builds confidence over time. Without clarity, actions feel random and outcomes feel disconnected, which weakens belief in oneself. With clarity, every step feels connected to a larger direction, reinforcing the idea that progress is being made, even when results are not immediate. In leadership and influence, clarity is the foundation of trust. People do not follow confusion. They follow those who can articulate a vision in a way that is simple, direct, and meaningful. When a message is clear, it removes the need for interpretation, allowing others to act with confidence. This creates momentum, and momentum strengthens belief within a group. A clear message spreads faster, lasts longer, and creates stronger alignment than a complex one. Clarity is not something that appears instantly. It is built through reflection and discipline. It requires asking better questions, removing distractions, and focusing on what truly matters. This process may take time, but once clarity is established, it simplifies everything else. Decisions become easier, communication becomes stronger, and confidence becomes natural rather than forced. When clarity is present, confidence is no longer something you try to display. It becomes a natural outcome of knowing exactly where you stand and where you are going. Speak to inspire, not impress, because the human mind does not remember complexity, it remembers connection. When people focus on impressing others, they often rely on sophisticated language, exaggerated claims, or overwhelming information. But research in communication and behavioral science shows that audiences retain far more from messages that are simple, emotionally relevant, and purpose-driven. Studies indicate that emotionally connected communication can increase message retention and influence decision-making far more effectively than purely informational or performance-based speech. This reveals a powerful truth that many overlook. People are not moved by how much you know, they are moved by how deeply they feel what you say. The desire to impress comes from a need for validation, and that need creates pressure. Under that pressure, people tend to overcomplicate their words, speak faster, and lose authenticity. Their focus shifts from delivering value to protecting their image, and as a result, their message weakens. In contrast, those who aim to inspire operate from a different mindset. They are not concerned with appearing intelligent or superior. They are focused on making their message meaningful and relatable. This shift removes pressure and replaces it with purpose, allowing their communication to feel natural and grounded. When someone speaks to impress, their language often becomes inaccessible. They may use jargon, long explanations, or abstract ideas that sound powerful but lack clarity. The audience may be temporarily impressed, but they leave without a clear takeaway. On the other hand, when someone speaks to inspire, they prioritize understanding over admiration. They choose words that are simple yet impactful, ideas that are easy to grasp yet emotionally strong. This creates a deeper connection because the audience does not have to work to understand the message. They can immediately feel it. Inspiration also creates action, while impression often creates distance. When people feel inspired, they see themselves in the message. They recognize their own struggles, their own goals, and their own potential within the words being spoken. This sense of identification builds trust and motivates them to take steps forward. In contrast, when people are impressed, they may admire the speaker, but they often feel separate from them. Admiration without connection rarely leads to change, but connection without admiration can still create transformation. The way a message is delivered plays a crucial role in this difference. Speaking to inspire requires vulnerability and honesty. It involves sharing ideas in a way that feels real rather than rehearsed. This does not mean exposing every personal detail, but it does mean removing the barrier between the speaker and the audience. When people sense authenticity, they become more open, more engaged, and more willing to trust the message being delivered. Authenticity cannot coexist with the need to impress, because one is rooted in truth and the other is rooted in perception. In high-pressure situations, the distinction becomes even clearer. Those trying to impress may become rigid, focusing on saying the right thing in the right way, which often leads to disconnection. Those aiming to inspire remain flexible, adapting their message to the moment while staying aligned with their purpose. This adaptability allows them to maintain connection even when conditions change, making their communication more resilient and effective. Over time, speaking to inspire builds a reputation that goes beyond surface-level recognition. People begin to associate your voice with clarity, honesty, and meaning. They remember how you made them feel rather than the exact words you used. This emotional memory is what creates lasting influence, because feelings are more durable than facts in shaping human behavior. Choosing to inspire also simplifies communication. It removes the need for performance and replaces it with intention. Instead of asking how to sound impressive, the focus shifts to what truly matters to the audience. This clarity strengthens both the message and the delivery, creating a powerful alignment between thought, word, and impact. When communication is rooted in inspiration, it no longer becomes an act of proving worth. It becomes an act of creating value, and that shift transforms not only how others perceive you, but how effectively your message lives on in their minds, and actions control the narrative inside your mind, because the story you tell yourself becomes the script you live out in reality. Cognitive science consistently shows that internal dialogue directly influences behavior, emotional regulation, and decision-making, meaning that individuals who consciously shape their self-talk are far more likely to perform effectively under pressure and recover faster from setbacks. The brain does not clearly distinguish between imagined experiences and real ones, which is why repeated negative thoughts can create the same stress responses as actual failure, while intentional, constructive narratives can build resilience and focus even before results appear. Most people allow their internal narrative to run on autopilot, shaped by past experiences, external opinions, and fear of uncertainty. This unconscious pattern often leads to self-doubt, hesitation, and overthinking. When the mind repeatedly says that something is too difficult or that failure is likely, the body responds by holding back effort, avoiding risk, and seeking safety instead of growth. Over time, this creates a cycle where limited action produces limited results, which then reinforces the negative narrative. Without intervention, this loop becomes stronger, making it harder to break free from patterns of underperformance. Those who learn to control their internal narrative interrupt this cycle. They do not ignore challenges or pretend that obstacles do not exist, but they choose how those challenges are interpreted. Instead of viewing difficulty as a signal to stop, they frame it as a natural part of progress. This shift changes the emotional response from fear to focus, allowing energy to be directed toward action rather than avoidance. The situation remains the same, but the meaning assigned to it transforms the outcome. Language plays a critical role in shaping this narrative. The difference between saying, "I cannot do this," and "I have not mastered this yet," may seem small, but it carries a completely different implication for the brain. The first statement creates a sense of finality, closing the door on effort, while the second keeps the possibility of growth open. This subtle adjustment in wording encourages persistence, which is essential for long-term success. Over time, consistently using growth-oriented language rewires thought patterns, making constructive thinking more automatic. Emotional control is also deeply connected to internal narrative. When negative thoughts dominate, they amplify stress and reduce the ability to think clearly. This often leads to reactive decisions driven by fear or frustration. By consciously guiding internal dialogue, it becomes possible to regulate emotions more effectively. Instead of reacting impulsively, individuals can pause, reassess the situation, and choose a response that aligns with their goals. This creates a sense of stability even in unpredictable environments. Controlling the narrative does not mean forcing positivity or denying reality. It means choosing accuracy and usefulness over distortion. A balanced internal narrative acknowledges challenges while maintaining a focus on solutions. It recognizes mistakes without turning them into identity. This approach builds self-trust because it creates a consistent and reliable way of interpreting experiences. When the mind knows that it will not be overwhelmed by negativity, it becomes easier to take risks and pursue meaningful goals. This control also extends to how individuals communicate with others. Internal clarity leads to external clarity. When the mind is not clouded by conflicting thoughts, speech becomes more direct, confident, and intentional. This strengthens personal and professional relationships because communication is grounded in certainty rather than insecurity. People are more likely to respond positively to someone who speaks with calm assurance, and that assurance begins internally. Over time, the accumulation of controlled narratives shapes identity. Repeated thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs influence actions. When those thoughts are intentionally directed toward growth, resilience, and purpose, they create a strong foundation for consistent progress. This does not eliminate challenges, but it changes how those challenges are experienced and overcome. Mastering the narrative inside your mind is one of the most powerful forms of control available, because it determines not only how you see the world, but how you respond to it and what results you ultimately create. Consistency builds authority. Because the human mind does not trust what appears once, it trusts what proves itself over time. Behavioral research shows that repeated exposure to a clear message and steady behavior significantly increases perceived credibility, making individuals who show up consistently far more influential than those who rely on occasional bursts of performance. This is because trust is not formed through intensity, it is formed through reliability, and reliability can only be demonstrated through consistent action. Most people underestimate the power of consistency because it feels slow and repetitive. They look for moments of breakthrough, thinking authority comes from a single powerful speech, a viral idea, or one big success. But authority is not built in moments, it is built in patterns. When someone shows up once with energy and disappears, people may notice them, but they do not rely on them. When someone shows up again and again with the same level of clarity and commitment, people begin to form expectations, and those expectations become trust. Consistency also removes doubt. Inconsistent behavior creates confusion, and confusion weakens perception. If your message changes constantly or your actions do not align with your words, people begin to question your reliability. This does not always happen consciously, but the effect is the same. The mind looks for stability, and when it does not find it, it hesitates to fully believe. On the other hand, when your actions and words align repeatedly over time, the need for verification disappears. People no longer question whether you are credible, they assume it. This principle is especially powerful in communication. A consistent message becomes recognizable, and recognition strengthens authority. When people hear the same core idea delivered with clarity across different situations, it reinforces understanding and builds familiarity. Familiarity reduces resistance because the message no longer feels new or uncertain. Instead, it feels proven. Over time, your voice becomes associated with a specific value or perspective, and that association becomes your identity in the minds of others. Consistency also strengthens internal confidence. When you commit to showing up regularly, regardless of mood or immediate results, you train your mind to prioritize discipline over emotion. This reduces the influence of temporary feelings like doubt or fatigue. Instead of asking whether you feel ready, you act because it is part of who you are. This repeated action builds a sense of control, and that control translates into confidence. You begin to trust yourself not because everything is perfect, but because you know you will continue moving forward. In high-pressure situations, consistency becomes a stabilizing force. When outcomes are uncertain, people fall back on habits. If your habits are inconsistent, your performance becomes unpredictable. If your habits are consistent, your performance remains steady even under stress. This is why individuals who train consistently often perform better than those who rely on bursts of effort. Their actions are not dependent on circumstances, they are guided by established patterns. Authority is also reinforced through predictability. This does not mean being rigid or unchanging, but it means maintaining a clear standard. People need to know what to expect from you. When your behavior aligns with a consistent standard, it creates a sense of security for those around you. They know how you will respond, what you stand for, and what level of quality you deliver. This predictability builds respect because it shows discipline and control. Over time, small, consistent actions accumulate into significant results. Each repeated effort may seem minor on its own, but together they create momentum. This momentum amplifies visibility and reinforces credibility. People begin to notice not just what you say, but how often and how reliably you say it. This repetition creates a strong presence that cannot be ignored. Consistency also filters out distraction. When you are committed to a clear direction and repeat it regularly, it becomes easier to ignore opportunities or opinions that do not align with your path. This focus strengthens your message and prevents dilution. Instead of trying to be everything to everyone, you become known for something specific, and that specificity strengthens authority. Building authority through consistency requires patience, but it creates results that are stable and long-lasting. Unlike quick success, which can fade just as fast as it appears, authority built over time becomes deeply rooted. It is supported by evidence, reinforced by repetition, and recognized by others without the need for constant validation. When consistency becomes part of your identity, authority is no longer something you try to achieve. It becomes a natural outcome of how you think, act, and show up every single day. Make others feel seen, because the deepest human need is not just to be heard, but to be understood. And research in social psychology shows that individuals who feel genuinely recognized and acknowledged are far more likely to trust, cooperate, and engage at a higher level. Studies on emotional intelligence and interpersonal connection consistently reveal that people remember how they were made to feel long after they forget the exact words that were spoken, which means the true power of communication lies not in delivering information, but in creating recognition. Most conversations fail not because of lack of words, but because of lack of presence. People listen with the intention to respond, not with the intention to understand. This creates a disconnect where words are exchanged, but meaning is lost. When someone does not feel seen, they withdraw, they hold back ideas, and they become less open. Over time, this reduces the quality of relationships and limits collaboration. In contrast, when someone feels truly seen, they become more expressive, more confident, and more willing to engage. This shift alone can transform the entire dynamic of a conversation. Making others feel seen begins with attention. Not partial attention, not distracted listening, but complete focus. The human brain is highly sensitive to signals of attention, and even small cues such as eye contact, body language, and pauses can communicate whether someone is genuinely present. When attention is fully given, it sends a powerful message that the other person matters. This cannot be faked, because people intuitively recognize authenticity. If attention is forced, it feels mechanical, but when it is real, it creates immediate connection. Language also plays a crucial role in this process. Reflective communication, where you acknowledge and validate what the other person is expressing, strengthens the feeling of being seen. This does not mean agreeing with everything, but it means showing that you understand their perspective. Simple shifts in wording can make a significant difference. Instead of moving quickly to your own point, pausing to recognize theirs builds trust and openness. This recognition reduces defensiveness and encourages deeper dialogue. Empathy is the foundation that supports this behavior. It allows you to step outside your own perspective and consider the experience of another person. This does not require having lived the same situation, but it requires the willingness to understand it. When empathy is present, communication becomes less about proving a point and more about building connection. This shift creates an environment where people feel safe to express themselves without fear of judgment. In leadership and influence, the ability to make others feel seen is one of the most powerful skills. People do not commit fully to those who overlook them. They commit to those who recognize their value. When individuals feel seen, they are more motivated, more loyal, and more aligned with shared goals. This is because recognition fulfills a fundamental psychological need, creating a sense of belonging and importance. Without this, even the most logical or strategic message can fail to inspire action. Making others feel seen also enhances your own clarity. When you listen deeply, gain a better understanding of different perspectives, which improves decision-making and problem-solving. This creates a cycle where connection leads to insight, and insight strengthens communication. Over time, this ability becomes a defining characteristic, shaping how others perceive and respond to you. This approach requires patience and discipline. It means slowing down in a world that encourages speed and prioritizing understanding over immediate response. It may feel inefficient in the moment, but it creates stronger and more meaningful interactions in the long term. The time invested in truly seeing others is returned through trust, cooperation, and deeper relationships. When people feel seen, they do not just hear your words, they connect with your intention. And that connection becomes the foundation for influence, trust, and lasting impact.